The human colony hung on the edge of the void, a fragile jewel of civilization surrounded by darkness. Lights flickered across its surface as alarms rang, warning of approaching danger that no one could stop. The alien fleet hovered above, immense and silent, a predator stalking prey it believed to be weak, unprepared, and defenseless. The humans had weapons, but they were limited, scattered across orbital defenses that had been designed for small-scale attacks, not the massive fleet that now surrounded them. Sensors failed repeatedly, systems went offline, and communication channels choked with static. Panic spread through the colony like wildfire. Officers shouted orders, engineers raced through corridors repairing failing systems, and civilians huddled in shelters, praying the worst would not come. Every hope felt gone. At the colony command center, Commander Leona Hayes gripped the railing of the observation deck, staring at the alien warships above. Her fingers shook slightly, not from fear but from the weight of responsibility. Her eyes scanned the readings, trying to make sense of what was happening, but nothing in her training or history could prepare her for this. The colony's defenses were failing faster than anyone could repair them. Alarms rang relentlessly, red lights bathed every wall, and emergency sirens screamed as if the building itself were terrified. Officers rushed past her, shouting orders that barely made sense, trying to organize defenses that had no chance of stopping the incoming fleet. Hayes could feel the desperation in every face. They were not ready for this. They were alone. Or so the aliens believed. Beyond the colony, the alien ships glided silently, their dark hulls reflecting distant starlight. They had crossed into human space without permission, expecting to find easy prey. They had calculated the humans would flee, scatter, or surrender. The alien admirals leaned over consoles on their flagships, laughing confidently, certain of their advantage. Their arrogance was complete, their pride blinding them to what humans could truly do. They assumed the humans were desperate, unorganized, and doomed. They thought victory would be immediate. But far from the colony, in the empty darkness of the void, something stirred. A faint blip appeared on human scanners, so small it might have been mistaken for a system glitch. Hayes noticed it first, her brow furrowed as she called over an officer. "Check that reading. Repeat all scans." "Something is out there," she ordered, her voice calm but urgent. The officer obeyed, typing frantically, eyes widening as the anomaly grew larger, more defined. It was not a glitch. It was massive. It was moving, deliberately, silently, inexorably toward the colony. The alien commanders laughed when their scanners detected the new object. A decoy, or a feeble attempt at a reinforcer. One growled, amusement and contempt mixing in his voice. "They are alone. They are helpless. Let us end this farce quickly." Their pilots moved into position, weapons powered up, shields activated. They believed the humans had no backup, no hope, no chance. They were confident. But the human warship emerging from the void was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Its hull glowed faintly with a cold, blue light, engines humming with a silent power that shook the space around it. The ship's design was sleek and angular, perfectly balanced, giving the impression of speed, strength, and precision. It moved not chaotically, but like a predator that had studied its prey for centuries, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Humans inside the vessel were calm, disciplined, and precise. Every crew member knew their role. Every system was running at peak efficiency. There was no panic, no hesitation, only preparation. On the bridge of the warship, Captain Orin Vale stood in silence. His eyes scanned the fleet of enemy vessels approaching the colony, noting every formation, every weak point, every pattern in their movement. "They think we are alone," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command and quiet confidence. "Let them learn patience. Let them learn precision. Let them learn fear." His officers nodded, each one understanding without speaking. Pilots prepped fighters, engineers checked weapon systems, communications officers ensured every signal was secure. The humans were not just coming to defend, they were coming to dominate, and they would do so with control and moral clarity. Back at the colony, Hayes' hands trembled slightly as the warship grew larger on the scanners. Civilians had begun to notice, whispers spreading through shelters. "Is it true? Did help arrive?" The anxiety was palpable, but hope began to replace fear. Not relief, not yet, but a faint, fragile spark that humanity had not been abandoned. Sensors confirmed the warship's arrival, massive, powerful, precise. Alien laughter suddenly faltered as readings appeared on their own screens. Their systems showed a vessel of unimaginable scale and strength approaching, engines perfectly synchronized, weapon systems ready but not firing. Something was coming that they had never expected. Something that would challenge every assumption they had made about humans. The alien admirals paused, unease creeping into their voices. What is that ship? One demanded. It shouldn't exist. It cannot exist. Humans cannot field a vessel of that scale in secret. But their words were hollow, for no answer could prepare them for what was coming. Sensors flickered, readings became inconsistent. Engines in several smaller ships began to fail. Weapons jammed without explanation. Pilots shouted as their consoles displayed phantom anomalies. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy was about to see that discipline, foresight, and moral precision were stronger than arrogance, numbers, or brute force. Inside the human warship, every crew member moved as one organism. Fighters deployed from hidden bays, striking at alien drones before they could react. Stealth systems cloaked corvettes, decoys manipulated enemy formations. Engineers worked silently, repairing minor system failures before they could grow. Communications officers monitored the entire battlefield, ensuring that no alien movement went unnoticed. Every human on that ship understood that the battle was not about chaos or destruction, it was about precision, timing, and psychological dominance. Every signal, every maneuver, every invisible interference was designed to break the aliens before the first full attack landed. Back at the alien command center, panic had begun to spread. Officers tried to restore weapon systems, engines roared to life, and shields flickered weakly, but every action failed. Systems froze inexplicably. Communication channels went silent. Pilots spun helplessly, engines sputtering, unable to escape the invisible snare set by humans. The alien admiral's face paled as he realized that every assumption about human weakness had been catastrophically wrong. They had underestimated patience, foresight, discipline, and moral clarity, and that underestimation had already turned into disaster. Hayes watched the warship approach from the colony's observation deck, heart pounding, but her mind calm. She knew that humanity had not come simply to defend, they had come to teach a lesson. Every alien who thought humans weak, scattered, or unprepared would now learn what happens when they trespass into human space. Every officer, every engineer, every civilian in the colony could feel the presence of the warship, its silent strength, its precise calm. Hope was rising like a tide, small but unstoppable. Captain Vale gave a single command: observe. Anticipate. Maintain formation. Strike only when necessary. Let patience be our weapon, and precision our shield. Every crew member nodded, understanding instinctively that the first engagement was not about firepower, it was about control, discipline, and the slow, inevitable breakdown of the aliens' arrogance. The warship glided closer, engines whispering through the void, and alien commanders could feel, though they did not understand fully, that their assumptions were already failing. Something unstoppable had entered the battlefield, and no one would survive underestimating it again. The alien fleet had thought the humans were helpless, alone, and doomed. They had believed no aid would come, that no force could match their strength. They were wrong. Across the void, humanity's presence was calm, precise, and morally absolute. The first spark of terror had entered the hearts of alien commanders, and it would grow into complete despair before the first shot was even fired. The warship moved steadily, silently, and relentlessly toward its prey. The galaxy had never seen a force like this. The humans were not only coming, they were arriving with certainty, patience, and calculated purpose. And the aliens would learn, too late, that trespassers never escape the discipline of humanity. The human warship advanced through the void, its engines humming like a predator stalking through shadows. Every light on the hull glowed cold and steady, reflecting discipline, focus, and purpose. Captain Orin Vale stood on the bridge, eyes scanning the alien fleet surrounding the helpless colony. He did not panic. He did not hesitate. Every officer, every engineer, every pilot moved as one, performing their roles with perfect coordination. The humans aboard the vessel had trained for years, prepared for centuries, and now their time had come. The aliens believed themselves untouchable, but they had underestimated patience, foresight, and human precision. On the alien dreadnoughts, officers noticed the human ship growing larger on their scanners. Some laughed, thinking it a bluff, a decoy to mislead their fleet. They send one ship to save them. Pathetic, one officer sneered, voice laced with arrogance. But as the readings stabilized, systems flickered, and anomalies appeared, laughter turned into unease. Sensors showed movement that should have been impossible. Weapons jammed before firing. Engines faltered without cause. Communications failed. Panic spread like wildfire through the alien crews, creeping into hearts that had never known fear. Inside the human warship, calm reigned. Captain Vale moved along the bridge, observing every crew member. His voice was quiet but commanding. Monitor. Anticipate. Position ourselves perfectly. Strike only when necessary. Patience is our weapon. Pilots adjusted fighter formations with precision. Engineers rerouted power to shields and propulsion systems silently, ensuring no vulnerability appeared. Communications officers tracked every alien movement, predicting patterns before they happened. The humans were not just attacking, they were teaching the invaders a lesson in discipline, intelligence, and patience. Back at the colony, Commander Leona Hayes watched the human warship draw closer. The citizens' hope grew, fragile but undeniable. Families whispered prayers, children clung to parents, officers breathed shallowly. For the first time, the impossible felt possible. The humans were not alone. The aliens had expected helpless victims, and now they were about to see what humanity could do when fully prepared, focused, and morally resolute. Suddenly, the warship shifted, accelerating toward the alien fleet with uncanny speed. Alien pilots scrambled, weapons firing blindly, shields straining to hold against attacks that did not come. Systems failed as the humans tested them silently. Engines sputtered. Lasers misfired. Communications broke down. The invaders realized too late that their assumptions had been completely wrong. Arrogance had blinded them to the reality of human skill, patience, and moral discipline. A fighter squadron launched from the warship, invisible until the precise moment. They struck at drones and scout ships, crippling them instantly, leaving the larger vessels in panic. Alien pilots shouted orders that could not be followed, shields flickered, and engines failed. Every move the humans made was deliberate, calculated, and precise. Not a single action was wasted. The aliens were learning that human discipline could outperform even the most advanced technology in the galaxy. On the alien command bridge, panic reached the highest levels. Admirals shouted frantic orders. Regroup. Retreat. Fire on anything. Protect the colony. But their voices were drowned in silence as systems failed one by one. Pilots drifted helplessly, engines dead, weapons offline. Engineers pounded consoles, trying to restore what was already lost. Morale collapsed as the reality of human foresight became undeniable. The humans had arrived not with chaos, not with fire, not with destruction, but with intelligence, patience, and precision. And that was already enough to break them. Captain Vale watched from his bridge, calm, resolute. Every ship, every system, every maneuver. Predict and anticipate. Let them fall into our discipline, not our anger. Precision and patience are stronger than any weapon. Every crew member understood. The humans did not need to unleash their full firepower. Every subtle interference, every invisible trap, every calculated pause weakened the enemy before a single full-scale attack was necessary. The alien fleet was losing its grip, emotionally and strategically, before any real battle had begun. At the colony, alarms continued, but the panic shifted. Officers felt hope returning, civilians dared to peek from shelters, and children whispered that humans were coming. Hayes gripped the railing, her heart pounding. "It's them," she whispered. "They've come for us." The warship's presence was more than physical. It carried confidence, moral certainty, and a reminder that humans were not helpless, not weak, not alone. The aliens had assumed superiority, but they were about to learn how wrong they had been. In the void, the human warship moved like a ghost, precise and unstoppable. Cloaked corvettes broke off, moving into blind spots. Decoy drones split enemy formations. Engineers prepared EMP pulses that would disable weapons silently. Fighters launched with perfect timing. Every action was a test, a lesson, a trap. Alien systems flared and died. Weapons fired at empty space. Engines failed as if the void itself had betrayed them. The humans had turned patience into a weapon, foresight into a trap, and discipline into an unstoppable force. The aliens were confused, terrified, and humiliated. Officers screamed into silence, pilots drifted helplessly, engineers cursed everything they had learned. Pride turned to fear. Confidence dissolved. Arrogance shattered. Every assumption about human weakness had been proven fatal. And still, the humans did not celebrate. They moved calmly, silently, morally. Their eyes were on the alien fleet, their purpose clear, their discipline absolute. Humanity had arrived not to destroy recklessly, but to demonstrate precision, control, and superior foresight. Captain Vale gave a final instruction for this stage: observe. Anticipate. Engage only when necessary. Every movement counts. Let patience be the weapon, let precision be the shield. His crew moved as one, a single organism, flowing through the void with purpose and skill. The alien fleet could only react, fail, and falter, unable to comprehend the full extent of human intelligence and discipline. They had trespassed. They had underestimated. And now, the consequences were unavoidable. The human warship moved closer, silent and deadly. Alien ships quivered on scanners, engines failing, weapons jamming. Pilots stared at the empty space before them, hearts pounding. Communication channels crackled with static, then silence. Every officer understood the truth: humans had come not only to defend but to dominate. They had come to prove that patience, foresight, and moral precision were more deadly than firepower, more terrifying than numbers, and more absolute than arrogance. Hayes felt a wave of emotion wash over the colony. She had been certain of defeat moments ago. Now, as the warship loomed closer, she felt hope, awe, and relief. Humans were not helpless. Humans were disciplined. Humans were precise. Humans were unstoppable. And the aliens would learn that lesson with every system failure, every drifting vessel, and every heartbeat filled with fear. The warship's engines hummed like a promise: humanity had arrived, and nothing would be the same again. Every blip on the alien scanners now told a story of failure. Every malfunctioned weapon, every frozen shield, every disabled engine was a testament to human precision. The aliens were learning in the most painful way possible. Trespassers into human space did not simply face death, they faced a force disciplined, patient, morally precise, and unstoppable. The warship advanced steadily, silently, its presence alone breaking morale, shattering arrogance, and instilling fear deeper than any weapon ever could. The void itself seemed to bend around the human vessel, acknowledging its discipline, its precision, its unyielding calm. Captain Vale observed every drifting alien ship, noting weakness, predicting panic, anticipating every desperate maneuver. Patience and foresight win battles faster than fire and chaos, he said softly. His officers nodded. His crew moved flawlessly. The humans were not just present, they were inevitable, unstoppable, precise, and morally absolute. The first wave of terror had begun, and the alien fleets had no defense. Every assumption they had made was collapsing before their eyes. And as the warship drew ever closer, the first subtle interventions began. Alien engines sputtered, weapons jammed, formations split, communications failed. Panic spread faster than any missile could fly. The humans had not yet struck full force. They only needed the weight of presence, discipline, and invisible influence to begin the collapse. In the colony, civilians whispered that humans had arrived, hope blossoming in hearts that had felt despair moments before. Hayes felt tears sting her eyes. They were not alone. Humanity had come. And the aliens would never forget the lesson they were about to learn. The alien fleet scrambled as systems continued to fail across their ships. Engines sputtered, weapons jammed, and communications broke into static that no officer could decipher. Panic became widespread, spreading like fire across the alien ranks. Officers shouted futile orders. Pilots spun helplessly in the void. Engineers pounded consoles, trying desperately to restore power, but every action met resistance, every system faltered as if the universe itself favored the humans. The fleet's arrogance evaporated, replaced by fear and confusion. They had assumed humans were weak, unprepared, scattered, but now, the reality of human precision and patience became undeniable. The humans were not attacking recklessly. They were moving deliberately, silently, and with a moral clarity that shook the invaders to their core. Inside the human warship, Captain Orenvale observed the alien chaos with calm eyes. Every movement, every failure in the alien fleet, was predicted and anticipated. "They are beginning to understand," he said softly, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Every flaw they make is a lesson. Every hesitation is our advantage. Let them see that patience and discipline outmatch arrogance and numbers." Officers nodded, eyes focused and unshaken. Pilots adjusted their flight patterns silently, moving through blind spots in the alien formations. Engineers rerouted power to shields, cloaking systems, and weapons bays without a single wasted motion. Communications officers monitored the chaos, predicting enemy actions before they happened, feeding the bridge every movement, every pattern, every hesitation. On the alien command bridge, despair had set in. Admirals shouted in frustration, but their words carried no power. Weapons could not fire. Engines could not maneuver. Pilots could not respond. Systems failed unpredictably. Young officers, inexperienced and unprepared for such absolute coordination, cowered at consoles, hands shaking. They were faced with a reality that no calculation, no preparation, no confidence could have prepared them for. Humans had arrived not only with firepower but with an intelligence, patience, and discipline that transcended mere technology. Back at the human colony, Commander Leona Hayes watched the unfolding scene on the monitors. Relief mixed with or filled her chest. The humans were not merely defending, they were demonstrating mastery over the void itself. Civilians whispered in shelters, children clutched their parents' hands, and officers exchanged silent looks of disbelief and hope. For the first time, they dared to believe that humanity was capable of more than survival. The human warship, massive and precise, glided through the void with purpose, each movement a message. Humanity would not be underestimated, and trespassers would learn the consequences of arrogance. Captain Vale issued calm commands: monitor all sectors. Predict every movement. Strike only where necessary. Let the void itself become our weapon. Every crew member moved as one, every action synchronized, every plan executed flawlessly. Fighters launched in precise sequences, targeting drones and corvettes with unerring accuracy. Cloaked corvettes and decoy drones manipulated alien formations, drawing ships into blind spots where engines would fail and weapons would jam. Every subtle intervention reinforced the humans' control of the battlefield. Alien pilots screamed into silence, unable to react. Weapons fired at empty space. Shields flickered and collapsed. Engines sputtered and died mid-maneuver. Officers pounded consoles, faces pale, realizing that every assumption about humans had been catastrophically wrong. Pride, confidence, and arrogance crumbled into fear, despair, and humiliation. They had underestimated patience, foresight, discipline, and moral clarity, and those qualities now dictated the flow of the battle. The human warship advanced steadily, its presence alone breaking morale. Every subtle movement demonstrated dominance without needing full force. The alien fleet was caught in a web of human intelligence, precision, and anticipation. Captain Vale observed every flicker on the scanners, every anomaly in enemy movement. Let them falter. Let them fail. Let them learn the cost of underestimating humanity. Engineers and officers worked seamlessly, ensuring that no human system faltered, that no opportunity was wasted. The humans had transformed the battlefield into a demonstration of moral and strategic supremacy. At the colony, civilians watched as hope blossomed. Families whispered prayers, officers stood taller, children stared at the monitors with wide eyes. Hayes felt tears sting her eyes. Humanity was not alone. They had arrived, precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. The aliens had trespassed into human space, expecting weakness, despair, and surrender. Instead, they faced patience, foresight, and moral clarity, the most terrifying weapons they could imagine. The alien fleet attempted desperate maneuvers, trying to regroup and regain control. Entire squadrons spun in chaotic patterns, but their engines sputtered, weapons failed, and communications collapsed. Panic spread like wildfire. Officers screamed orders that could not be followed. Pilots drifted helplessly. Engineers frantically tried to restore systems, but every effort failed. The humans had anticipated each reaction, each desperation, each attempt at recovery. The alien fleet was unraveling, emotionally and strategically, without a single direct strike from the human warship. Captain Vale's calm voice carried over the bridge. Every hesitation, every miscalculation, every futile attempt is proof that patience and discipline surpass chaos and arrogance. Observe. Anticipate. Act only when necessary. Let them collapse under their own mistakes. Every crew member understood. The humans did not need to destroy recklessly. They did not need to engage with chaos or anger. Every subtle interference, every calculated pause, every unseen action ensured the enemy's emotional and strategic defeat. The alien admirals, faces pale and hands trembling, began to realize the full scope of their failure. They had assumed humans were weak, scattered, and slow. They had assumed that the warship approaching the colony was a bluff, a single ship incapable of influencing the battle. They were wrong. Every system failure, every misfired weapon, every frozen engine was a testament to human precision, patience, and foresight. They had underestimated the moral and intellectual discipline of humanity, and it was already too late. Inside the human warship, officers and engineers moved with quiet efficiency. Fighters adjusted formation angles, targeting drones with precision that left alien pilots floundering. Cloaked ships disrupted enemy coordination, drawing vessels into blind spots where engines would fail without warning. Communication officers relayed every anomaly to the bridge, predicting panic before it appeared. Every human on the ship understood that the first phase of this operation was not destruction, it was control, precision, and moral clarity. The aliens were being broken emotionally before a single full-scale attack was necessary. At the colony, Hayes could feel the change in atmosphere. Alarm bells still rang, but the fear that had gripped every officer and civilian began to shift. Hope emerged, fragile but growing, as humans demonstrated control, discipline, and precise power. The alien fleet had assumed helpless victims. They had assumed easy prey. They were about to learn that underestimating humanity carried consequences far beyond firepower or numbers. Captain Vale issued a single command: advance. Maintain calm. Let them falter. Let them fail. Precision is our weapon. Patience is our shield. The human warship moved steadily, silently, a predator gliding through shadows. Alien ships faltered, engines sputtered, weapons failed, and communications remained silent. Panic spread across their ranks. Officers shouted in futility. Pilots drifted helplessly. Engineers cursed everything they had once trusted. Pride, confidence, and arrogance had been replaced by despair, fear, and humiliation. Every subtle move of the human warship, every invisible interference, every calculated pause reinforced human dominance. The alien fleet could not comprehend what was happening. Every system failure, every frozen weapon, every drifting ship was proof of human foresight, discipline, and moral precision. The humans did not need full firepower to dominate. They only needed control, patience, and intelligence. And that was enough to terrify an entire fleet. The void itself seemed to acknowledge the presence of the human warship. Every star, every planet, every drifting satellite reflected the cold light of the vessel as it moved with deliberate purpose. Captain Vale observed every failure in the alien ranks, noting patterns, predicting panic, and preparing the next phase. They trespassed. They assumed weakness. They will learn the cost of arrogance, he said quietly. Officers nodded, understanding that this was not merely a battle, it was a demonstration of what humanity had become: precise, disciplined, patient, morally absolute, and unstoppable. The human warship moved closer, engines humming silently, lights cold and steady, weapons poised but not fired. Every subtle movement was a message to the aliens: you assumed we were weak. You assumed we were alone. You assumed you could strike without consequence. You were wrong. Panic continued to ripple across the alien fleet. Pilots drifted helplessly. Weapons jammed. Engines failed. Officers cursed themselves. The humans had arrived, and the first phase of terror, the first lesson in discipline, foresight, and moral clarity, was complete. In the colony, civilians whispered, officers exhaled, children stared in awe. Hayes felt tears well up. Humans were not alone. They had arrived. Precise, disciplined, unstoppable. The alien fleet, once confident and arrogant, now trembled under the weight of human patience, foresight, and moral precision. And as the warship glided silently closer, Captain Vale prepared for the next phase, knowing the aliens' pride had already been shattered. The void trembled under the presence of the human warship, though no shots had yet been fired. Alien fleets, once arrogant and confident, drifted in confusion, engines sputtering, shields flickering, weapons failing. Panic spread faster than any weapon could travel. Officers shouted useless commands. Pilots spun helplessly, unable to respond to the invisible hand guiding chaos around them. Engineers frantically tried to restore systems, but each action met failure. Their technology was advanced, precise, and deadly, but it could not withstand the discipline, patience, and moral precision of humanity. Each failure on the alien vessels was a quiet victory, a message that arrogance could no longer protect them. Captain Orin Vale stood on the bridge of the human warship, eyes calm, voice steady. Observe. Predict. Prepare. Let them unravel under their own mistakes. Strike only when necessary. Patience is our weapon. Discipline is our shield. Every officer and crew member understood implicitly. They moved as one, a single organism of precision and purpose. Engineers rerouted power silently, keeping shields strong and systems flawless. Pilots maneuvered through blind spots in the alien formations, every motion deliberate, every adjustment calculated. Communication officers relayed every alien action to the bridge before it happened, feeding predictions that kept the human vessel one step ahead. The humans had transformed the battlefield into a demonstration of superiority without firing a single full-strength salvo. At the colony, Commander Leona Hayes felt her heart pound as the human warship grew closer. The citizens whispered in fear and awe. Families clutched each other, children peered out from shelters, and officers watched monitors in disbelief. For the first time, they dared to believe that they were not alone. The human ship carried more than firepower. It carried hope, discipline, and the moral certainty of a species unwilling to be underestimated. Hayes exhaled slowly, realizing the humans had arrived not just to defend, but to teach a lesson no alien could forget. Alien admirals barked orders that could not be executed. Weapons jammed as soon as they were powered, engines failed mid-maneuver, shields collapsed in ways they could not predict. Panic consumed the fleet. Officers cursed themselves, pilots drifted helplessly, and engineers shouted at machines that no longer obeyed. Every arrogance they had relied upon crumbled under the weight of unseen human precision. The aliens had trespassed into human space, assuming weakness, but now they faced intelligence, foresight, patience, and moral clarity they could not comprehend. Captain Vale observed the alien chaos with quiet satisfaction. Every failure, every hesitation, every futile reaction strengthens us. They learned too late that patience, discipline, and foresight dominate numbers and power. Let them collapse under their own mistakes. Officers nodded, adjusting tactical positions with perfect coordination. Cloaked corvettes moved silently into flanks, unseen by alien sensors. Decoy drones guided enemy formations into blind spots. Fighters struck at precise angles, crippling ships that thought they were untouchable. Engineers monitored every anomaly, ready to exploit weaknesses with calm precision. Every move was calculated. Every action had purpose. The alien fleet's fear grew, raw and uncontainable. Pilots yelled as engines sputtered, shields collapsed, weapons misfired. Officers slammed consoles in desperation, realizing that every assumption they had made about human weakness was wrong. Pride turned to despair. Arrogance melted into panic. Every failure reinforced the humans' dominance, proving that discipline and foresight were stronger than brute force. The invaders were learning, painfully, that underestimating humanity carried a cost far beyond destruction. Inside the human warship, crew members moved seamlessly. Fighters launched in precise sequences, disrupting enemy formations. Cloaked ships manipulated alien positioning, forcing vessels into traps where engines would fail and weapons would jam. Communication officers fed constant updates to the bridge, predicting panic before it appeared. Engineers silently adjusted systems to maintain perfect balance. Humans were not rushing to strike, they were demonstrating control, turning patience into a weapon, foresight into a snare. The aliens could only react, and every reaction failed spectacularly. Back at the colony, Hayes felt hope rise within her. Civilians whispered prayers, children clung to parents, officers stood taller. Humanity was not helpless. They were disciplined, precise, morally strong. The aliens had believed the humans weak, scattered, unprepared, but now, they were witnessing power that was invisible yet undeniable. The human warship was more than metal and engines, it was a message, a promise, a force that demanded respect, awe, and fear. The alien admirals realized their mistakes too late. Their fleet, once confident and coordinated, now staggered under the invisible pressure of human precision. Systems failed. Weapons jammed. Engines sputtered. Communication channels went silent. Every attempt to regain control only deepened their panic. Officers shouted orders that could not be followed. Pilots drifted helplessly. Engineers cursed as consoles failed without explanation. The humans had not fired a single full salvo, yet the alien fleet was unraveling, emotionally and strategically, under the weight of moral discipline, foresight, and patience. Captain Vale moved along the bridge, observing each subtle shift in alien behavior. Let them doubt. Let them fear. Let them panic. Patience and precision will break them before we strike. Officers nodded, knowing the first wave of control was more important than firepower. Every move the humans made was deliberate. Every silent interference crippled the enemy. The alien fleet's confidence collapsed like sand slipping through fingers, leaving only terror and confusion in its place. In the void, the human warship advanced steadily, lights cold and precise, engines humming quietly. Every system operated at peak efficiency. Cloaked corvettes adjusted angles. Decoy drones manipulated formations. Fighters moved with exact timing. Engineers maintained balance and control. Communication officers relayed predictions. Every action was coordinated. Every move reinforced the humans' dominance. The aliens had trespassed. They had underestimated. And now, they would pay, not through firepower alone, but through the discipline, foresight, and moral precision of humanity. Back at the colony, civilians dared to hope. Officers dared to believe. Children stared at monitors in awe. Hayes felt tears sting her eyes. Humans had arrived, precise, disciplined, unstoppable. The alien fleet had assumed victory, assuming weakness, assuming helplessness. Every system failure, every drifting ship, every panicked officer proved they had miscalculated. Humanity had arrived, and the first lesson was already delivered. Discipline, patience, and moral certainty could break arrogance before a shot was fired. Captain Vale gave the next command, advance steadily. Maintain precision. Let them falter. Let them fail. Observe, anticipate, strike only when necessary. Let patience and discipline dominate. Every human crew member moved as one organism, a single, unstoppable force. Alien pilots drifted helplessly. Officers panicked. Engineers cursed. Systems failed repeatedly. Pride had been replaced by fear, arrogance by despair. Every subtle human action demonstrated dominance without full attack. The aliens were learning, slowly, painfully, and too late, that moral and strategic discipline could not be ignored. The void seemed alive with the presence of the human warship. Every star reflected its cold light. Every drifting satellite seemed smaller, insignificant. Every alien ship appeared fragile. Captain Vale observed every reaction, predicted every hesitation, and prepared the next stage. They trespassed. They assumed we were weak. They will learn the cost of arrogance. Officers nodded silently. Every subtle interference, every invisible action, every calculated pause ensured the alien fleet's emotional and strategic defeat. Humans were not just defending, they were demonstrating superiority across the void itself. And as the warship advanced closer to the colony, aliens could feel, even if they could not see or understand, that the first battle had already been lost. Pride, confidence, and arrogance had been shattered. Every hesitation, every failure, every frozen weapon, every drifting pilot was proof that humanity's patience, foresight, discipline, and moral certainty had turned the tide before the first true attack. The warship's presence alone instilled fear, awe, and respect. Civilians whispered, officers exhaled, children stared wide-eyed. Humans had arrived. Humans were precise. Humans were unstoppable. The human warship advanced steadily, its presence alone bending the void around it with quiet authority. The alien fleet, once confident and arrogant, drifted helplessly. Engines sputtered, shields flickered, and weapons refused to fire. Every officer aboard the alien vessels cursed, shouted, and panicked, but their words fell on deaf systems that no longer obeyed. Pilots drifted helplessly, unable to maneuver, their hands trembling on controls that had betrayed them. Engineers pounded consoles, but every attempt to restore order failed. Arrogance had blinded them, and now discipline, patience, and moral precision were exacting their price. Captain Orin Vale moved silently along the bridge, his eyes scanning every monitor, every anomaly, every subtle hint of enemy panic. Predict. Observe. Intervene only where necessary. Let patience be the weapon. Let discipline be the shield, he said, voice calm, steady, resolute. Every officer on the bridge nodded, understanding that humanity's strength was not only in firepower but in precision, foresight, and moral clarity. The humans did not need chaos, did not need indiscriminate destruction. Every subtle interference, every calculated pause, every unseen trap was enough to break the aliens' will. Inside the alien fleet, officers screamed in desperation. Weapons jammed mid-fire, shields collapsed unpredictably, and engines faltered without reason. Pilots panicked, spinning helplessly in the void as systems failed. Engineers cursed machines that no longer obeyed. Admirals bellowed orders that could not be executed. Pride turned to terror. Confidence dissolved into despair. Every assumption about human weakness had proven catastrophically wrong. They had trespassed into human space expecting easy prey, but instead they faced moral precision, foresight, and discipline that the galaxy had never seen. Back at the colony, Commander Leona Hayes felt a rush of emotion wash over her. She had feared the worst, but now hope bloomed. Civilians whispered in awe and relief. Children clutched their parents' hands, wide-eyed. Officers exchanged looks of disbelief. Humanity had arrived not just to defend, but to demonstrate what was possible when discipline, patience, and moral certainty guided every action. The human warship was more than a ship, it was a manifestation of focus, intelligence, and purpose. Its presence alone inspired hope and fear in equal measure. Captain Vale continued to give quiet, precise commands. Monitor every system. Predict every reaction. Let them falter under their own assumptions. Strike only when necessary. Discipline and patience will break them faster than any weapon. Pilots adjusted formations silently, engines humming with precise efficiency. Fighters deployed in exact sequences, disrupting alien formations. Cloaked corvettes manipulated enemy positions, forcing ships into blind spots where engines failed and weapons jammed. Engineers maintained flawless balance, rerouting power quietly, ensuring no vulnerability appeared. Every action was deliberate. Every move reinforced human dominance. Alien panic deepened. Entire squadrons drifted helplessly, engines dead, weapons offline, communications static. Officers cursed themselves, realizing that every assumption they had made about human weakness was false. Pride became fear. Arrogance turned into despair. Every failure reinforced human superiority, demonstrating that patience, foresight, and moral precision were more powerful than numbers or technology. They had underestimated humanity's discipline and clarity of purpose, and it was already too late to recover. The human warship glided silently through the void, cold and deliberate. Captain Vale observed every subtle shift in the alien fleet. Every hesitation, every futile attempt, every frozen system is proof that patience and precision win before firepower is even needed, he said. Engineers nodded, adjusting systems to perfection. Pilots maintained flawless formations. Every subtle interference, every invisible maneuver, every calculated pause weakened the enemy further. The alien fleet was unraveling emotionally and strategically, entirely under the invisible control of the humans' discipline. Back at the colony, Hayes felt tears well in her eyes. Humans were not alone. They were precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. Civilians whispered prayers, officers stood taller, children stared at the monitors with awe. The alien fleet had trespassed expecting easy victory, expecting fear and weakness, expecting surrender. They had found instead a force of patience, discipline, and moral clarity. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. Captain Vale issued the next series of commands: advance slowly. Maintain precision. Observe, anticipate, and only act when necessary. Let them crumble under their own arrogance. The crew obeyed flawlessly. Fighters struck with surgical precision. Cloaked ships created confusion in enemy formations. Decoy drones manipulated positions. Engineers silently adjusted power distribution to shields, weapons, and engines. Communication officers predicted panic and relayed instructions to the bridge before hesitation could even occur. The human warship was not just a vessel, it was a force of inevitability, a lesson in discipline, and a demonstration of moral and strategic superiority. Alien admirals tried to regroup, but chaos ruled their fleet. Weapons misfired. Engines failed. Communications collapsed. Pilots drifted helplessly. Officers shouted futile commands. Pride and confidence were replaced by fear and despair. Every subtle move of the humans reinforced dominance without the need for full attack. The aliens realized, too late, that they had underestimated patience, foresight, and moral precision, the traits that now controlled the battlefield entirely. Inside the warship, every human acted with perfect timing. Fighters deployed in precise sequences. Cloaked corvettes disrupted enemy formations, guiding them into traps. Decoy drones forced alien ships into blind spots. Engineers maintained perfect system balance, ensuring every maneuver was flawless. Communication officers predicted enemy panic before it appeared. Humans were not rushing. They were demonstrating control. They were teaching a lesson without chaos, without anger, without fire. Every subtle interference left the alien fleet in emotional and strategic collapse. At the colony, civilians whispered in awe. Officers held their breath, watching the humans demonstrate mastery over the void itself. Children stared wide-eyed at the monitors. Hayes felt her heart swell with relief and hope. Humanity was precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. The aliens had assumed victory, assuming the humans weak and helpless. They were learning, painfully, that arrogance and numbers meant nothing against patience, foresight, and moral clarity. The first true lesson in the humans' dominance had been delivered, and it was unforgettable. Captain Vale observed the alien fleet carefully. Every hesitation, every misfire, every frozen system is proof of our dominance. Let them falter. Let them fail. Let patience and discipline break them. Officers and crew acted as one organism, flowing through the void with purpose. Alien pilots drifted helplessly. Officers panicked. Engineers cursed. Pride, confidence, and arrogance dissolved into fear, despair, and humiliation. Every subtle move by the humans reinforced dominance and precision, demonstrating that moral clarity, discipline, and foresight were more terrifying than numbers or raw firepower. The human warship glided closer to the colony, engines humming silently. Its lights reflected cold determination. Every subtle maneuver disrupted enemy formations, every invisible interference crippled alien systems. Alien ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, engines sputtering. Officers screamed futile commands. Pilots panicked. Engineers cursed. Every assumption about human weakness had been shattered. The humans had arrived to defend and to teach a lesson that no alien fleet would forget. At the colony, hope and awe filled hearts. Civilians whispered prayers, children clutched parents, officers exchanged glances of disbelief. Hayes felt tears sting her eyes. Humans were not alone. They were precise. They were disciplined. They were unstoppable. The alien fleet, once confident and arrogant, trembled under the weight of patience, foresight, and moral precision. And as the warship glided silently, preparing for the next phase, every alien ship, officer, and pilot knew that their arrogance had already cost them dearly. Humanity had arrived, and the first true test of power, discipline, and inevitability was already complete. The void seemed to tremble under the presence of the human warship. It moved with deliberate purpose, gliding silently yet powerfully through the space between stars, every system humming in perfect balance. The alien fleet, once confident and arrogant, now drifted helplessly. Their engines sputtered, their shields flickered, and their weapons failed in unpredictable patterns. Officers shouted futile orders, their faces pale, hands trembling over consoles that refused to obey. Pilots spun helplessly, their minds grappling with the incomprehensible failure of systems that had once been flawless. Engineers cursed the machinery, yet even their expertise could not restore order. Arrogance had blinded them, and now humanity's discipline, patience, and moral clarity exacted a heavy price. Captain Orin Vale stood calmly on the bridge, observing every anomaly, every subtle change in enemy behavior. His eyes were steady, voice quiet yet commanding. Anticipate. Predict. Intervene only when necessary. Every hesitation is our advantage. Every error is a lesson for them. Let patience guide us, let discipline shield us. Officers nodded silently, moving in perfect synchronization. Pilots adjusted angles, engines hummed with precise efficiency. Cloaked corvettes moved into flanking positions, invisible to alien sensors. Decoy drones manipulated enemy formations, forcing ships into blind spots where engines failed and weapons jammed. Engineers rerouted power seamlessly, maintaining perfect shields and operational systems. Every action was deliberate, every movement a demonstration of human control over the battlefield. In the alien fleet, panic spread like wildfire. Weapons misfired. Engines sputtered. Shields collapsed without warning. Officers screamed in desperation, realizing their assumptions about human weakness had been catastrophically wrong. Pilots drifted helplessly, their training useless against invisible interference. Engineers frantically attempted repairs, but every console, every system, failed at the precise moment it was needed. Admirals barked orders that could not be executed. Confidence dissolved into fear. Arrogance turned to despair. Pride, once unwavering, had crumbled completely. Humanity's moral and strategic precision dominated without firing full-strength weapons. Every subtle human action caused chaos, despair, and panic among those who had once believed themselves untouchable. At the human colony, Commander Leona Hayes watched the monitors with a mixture of awe and relief. Civilians whispered, their fear slowly replaced by hope. Children clutched their parents, staring at the unfolding spectacle with wide eyes. Officers exchanged silent nods, their disbelief giving way to admiration. Humanity was not merely defending, they were demonstrating mastery over space itself, a combination of intelligence, foresight, discipline, and moral certainty. The human warship was more than a vessel of steel and engines, it was a manifestation of calculated inevitability. Its presence alone demanded respect, fear, and awe. Captain Vale issued calm commands. Advance steadily. Maintain observation. Predict every reaction. Strike only when necessary. Let discipline and patience guide us. Let every hesitation weaken them further. Every crew member acted in perfect unison. Fighters launched in precise sequences, striking with surgical accuracy. Cloaked ships disrupted enemy formations, guiding alien vessels into blind spots. Decoy drones manipulated positions, forcing enemy engines to fail. Engineers monitored systems silently, ensuring flawless operation. Communication officers relayed enemy panic before it even emerged, feeding the bridge with predictions that kept humanity one step ahead. The warship itself became more than a ship, it was a force of inevitability, a lesson in discipline, patience, and moral clarity. The alien admirals realized the magnitude of their failure too late. Entire squadrons drifted helplessly, engines dead, weapons offline, communications broken. Officers screamed commands that could not be followed. Pilots panicked, spiraling into the void. Engineers cursed every failed system. Pride and arrogance had been replaced with fear, despair, and humiliation. The humans had arrived not merely to defend but to demonstrate the consequences of misjudgment, the cost of underestimating patience, discipline, and moral precision. Every subtle move by humanity left the alien fleet unraveling, emotionally and strategically. Inside the human warship, every officer and engineer moved with quiet purpose. Every fighter, every corvette, every drone operated in perfect harmony. Cloaked ships disrupted alien formations. Decoy drones forced enemy vessels into traps where engines failed without warning. Engineers maintained perfect system balance, rerouting power as necessary. Communication officers predicted panic and relayed instructions before hesitation could take hold. Every human action demonstrated control, dominance, and moral clarity. Humanity did not need chaos or indiscriminate destruction. Patience and precision were weapons stronger than firepower. Back at the colony, civilians whispered prayers of relief, officers exhaled, and children stared in awe. Hayes felt tears well in her eyes. Humanity had arrived, precise, disciplined, unstoppable. The aliens had trespassed expecting weakness, expecting fear, expecting surrender. Instead, they faced foresight, patience, and moral certainty. They had underestimated the humans' discipline and intelligence, and they were learning, painfully and too late, the cost of arrogance. Captain Vale continued to give quiet, precise orders. Observe. Predict. Intervene only where necessary. Let hesitation and fear dominate them. Let every misstep be a lesson they cannot recover from. Patience is our weapon. Discipline is our shield. Officers nodded, moving in perfect synchronization. Fighters launched, engines hummed, cloaked ships flanked, decoy drones maneuvered. Engineers rerouted power silently. Communication officers fed predictions of panic to the bridge before it could appear. Every subtle human action disrupted the alien fleet further, leaving them helpless in the void, unable to regain control. The alien fleet's panic grew exponentially. Pilots drifted helplessly. Weapons failed repeatedly. Engines sputtered, shields collapsed. Officers cursed, realizing that every assumption they had made about human weakness was fatally wrong. Pride had crumbled into fear. Arrogance dissolved into despair. Every subtle interference by humans reinforced dominance without a single full-strength attack. The aliens were learning, slowly, painfully, that underestimating patience, foresight, and moral precision had a cost far greater than any weapon. The human warship glided closer to the colony, its lights cold and precise, engines humming silently. Every movement disrupted alien formations, every subtle interference crippled their systems. Alien ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, engines sputtering. Officers shouted orders that could not be executed. Pilots panicked. Engineers cursed. Every assumption about human weakness had been destroyed. Humanity had arrived, and the first phase of absolute control, discipline, and inevitability had already been established. At the colony, civilians whispered in awe, officers held their breath, children stared wide-eyed. Hayes felt her heart swell. Humanity was precise. Humanity was disciplined. Humanity was unstoppable. The alien fleet, once arrogant and confident, now trembled under the weight of moral and strategic discipline. And as the warship advanced, preparing for the next stage, every alien officer and pilot knew that their arrogance had already cost them dearly. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had shown what it meant to be disciplined, precise, and unstoppable. The human warship pressed forward through the void with unwavering purpose. Its cold lights reflected off distant stars, shining like a silent promise. Alien vessels, once confident and disciplined, now drifted helplessly, their formation broken, engines sputtering, and shields flickering erratically. Weapons that had once struck fear across galaxies now misfired at crucial moments, betraying their crews. Officers screamed orders that could not be executed, and pilots spun helplessly, struggling against systems that no longer obeyed them. The aliens had trespassed into human space, expecting weakness, assuming fear, and seeking easy victory. Instead, they faced precision, foresight, and moral clarity that the galaxy had never witnessed. Panic spread across the alien fleet like wildfire, consuming arrogance and leaving only despair. Captain Orin Vale stood calmly on the bridge, his eyes scanning every monitor, every subtle movement of the alien fleet, every faint blip that suggested hesitation or panic. Observe. Anticipate. Intervene only when necessary. Let them unravel under their own assumptions. Patience is our weapon. Discipline is our shield, he said quietly. Every officer and crew member understood. Humanity's strength was not just firepower but moral precision, foresight, and an unshakable discipline that guided every move. Engineers rerouted power to shields and engines with silent expertise. Pilots maneuvered in perfect synchronization, striking gaps in enemy formations without exposing themselves. Cloaked corvettes slipped unseen along flanks, guiding enemy vessels into traps they could not detect. Decoy drones manipulated positions, forcing alien ships to make fatal mistakes. Every subtle action demonstrated the human superiority. The alien admirals realized, too late, that their arrogance had been catastrophic. Entire squadrons drifted helplessly, engines dead, weapons offline, communications collapsing into static. Officers cursed, shouting commands that could not be followed. Pilots panicked, spiraling helplessly through the void. Engineers frantically attempted repairs, but every system failed at precisely the wrong moment. Pride crumbled into fear. Confidence dissolved into despair. Humanity's moral and strategic precision dominated before a single full-strength attack. Every subtle interference caused chaos, despair, and panic. The aliens were learning, painfully, that underestimating humans carried a cost far greater than any weapon they could fire. Back at the colony, Commander Leona Hayes watched the monitors with awe and trembling relief. Civilians whispered softly, some clutching each other in fear, others staring in astonishment. Children pressed their faces against screens, eyes wide with awe. Officers exchanged silent glances, acknowledging that hope had returned. Humanity had arrived, disciplined, precise, unstoppable. The human warship was more than steel and engines, it was an embodiment of intelligence, patience, foresight, and moral certainty. Its presence alone changed the course of the battle, teaching lessons without fury or indiscriminate fire. Captain Vale issued calm commands. Advance steadily. Maintain observation. Predict every reaction. Strike only when necessary. Let hesitation dominate them. Let every misstep teach them the cost of arrogance. Pilots adjusted angles, engines hummed with exact precision. Cloaked ships moved to flank enemy formations, invisible yet devastating in their purpose. Decoy drones manipulated enemy positions, forcing ships into blind spots where engines failed and weapons misfired. Engineers maintained flawless balance. Communication officers relayed enemy panic before it could appear, giving the bridge predictive advantage. Every subtle human maneuver disrupted the alien fleet further, leaving them emotionally and strategically collapsed. The alien fleet's panic intensified. Pilots spun helplessly. Weapons misfired repeatedly. Engines faltered. Shields flickered, failed, and went offline. Officers cursed, realizing every assumption about human weakness was fatally wrong. Arrogance dissolved into despair. Pride turned to fear. Every subtle interference by humans reinforced dominance without a single full-strength strike. The aliens were learning, slowly and painfully, that patience, foresight, and moral clarity were more powerful than firepower or numbers. Their trespass into human space had been a fatal mistake, and every second confirmed it. Inside the warship, humans moved in perfect synchronization. Every fighter, every corvette, every drone operated in harmony. Cloaked ships disrupted enemy formations, guiding alien vessels into traps. Decoy drones manipulated enemy engines and weapons, ensuring maximum confusion. Engineers silently adjusted power distribution to maintain flawless shields and operational efficiency. Communication officers predicted panic before it emerged, feeding information to the bridge to maintain flawless execution. The human warship was more than a vessel, it was a force of inevitability, a lesson in discipline, patience, and moral precision. At the colony, civilians whispered in awe, officers exhaled with relief, and children stared wide-eyed. Hayes felt tears well in her eyes. Humanity was precise. Humanity was disciplined. Humanity was unstoppable. The aliens, once arrogant and confident, now trembled under the weight of moral and strategic discipline. They had trespassed expecting weakness, but they had encountered perfection, patience, and unyielding resolve. Captain Vale gave his next orders quietly. Observe. Predict. Let hesitation dominate. Let every misstep break them further. Discipline and patience are stronger than any weapon. Officers nodded, pilots adjusted formation, cloaked corvettes moved silently, decoy drones disrupted enemy positioning, and engineers maintained perfect systems. Every human action reinforced dominance, leaving the alien fleet in complete confusion. Pride, arrogance, and confidence had dissolved into fear, despair, and humiliation. Every subtle interference from humans dominated the battlefield before a single full-strength shot could be fired. The human warship glided closer to the colony, cold, precise, unstoppable. Alien ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, engines sputtering. Officers shouted futile orders. Pilots panicked. Engineers cursed. Every assumption about human weakness had been destroyed. Humanity had arrived, and the first phase of absolute control had already been established. Civilians whispered prayers of relief and hope. Officers exhaled, watching the humans demonstrate mastery over the void itself. Children stared wide-eyed, imagining the precision and discipline required to dominate in silence. Hayes felt her heart swell with pride and awe. Humanity was not just defending, they were demonstrating the cost of arrogance, the weight of discipline, the inevitability of moral clarity. Every alien failure reinforced the lesson. Humans were precise. Humans were disciplined. Humans were unstoppable. And as the warship moved, preparing for the next phase, every alien officer, every pilot, every admiral understood too late that their arrogance had already cost them dearly. They had trespassed, underestimated, and failed to recognize that moral and strategic discipline could dominate the void without a single full-strength attack. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had shown what it meant to be precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. The human warship glided through the void like a predator that had already claimed its territory. Its cold lights reflected off distant stars, casting a glow of inevitability over the chaos that now defined the alien fleet. Ships that had once moved with arrogance and confidence now drifted helplessly, their engines sputtering, their shields flickering, and their weapons misfiring at the worst possible moments. Officers shouted commands that could not be obeyed. Pilots twisted in their cockpits, hearts pounding, hands trembling, unable to comprehend the invisible forces that guided their failures. Engineers cursed systems that no longer responded, and admirals stared at screens in disbelief, realizing that their assumptions had been fatally flawed. Every moment that passed reinforced the truth: humanity's precision, foresight, and discipline were absolute, and their moral clarity was unmatched. Captain Orrin Vale stood on the bridge, calm and focused. His eyes scanned every monitor, every movement of the alien fleet, every subtle change in their formation or behavior. Observe. Predict. Intervene only where necessary. Every hesitation is our advantage. Every failure is a lesson for them. Let patience guide us. Let discipline shield us, he said quietly. The officers moved in perfect synchronization, pilots adjusted their trajectories with exacting precision, and engineers rerouted power silently to ensure flawless systems. Cloaked corvettes flanked enemy ships, invisible yet deadly in purpose. Decoy drones guided alien vessels into traps where engines would fail and weapons would misfire. Every subtle action reinforced human dominance without a single full-strength attack. Inside the alien fleet, panic consumed every level of command. Weapons jammed mid-fire. Shields collapsed unpredictably. Engines faltered without warning. Officers cursed and shouted, realizing that their technology had betrayed them. Pilots spun helplessly through the void, unable to respond to the invisible manipulations that disrupted their formations. Engineers worked frantically, but every console, every system, failed at the exact moment it was needed. Pride turned to fear, confidence dissolved into despair, and arrogance shattered completely. Humanity's moral and strategic precision dominated before a single full-strength attack could land. Every subtle interference caused chaos, panic, and despair among those who had believed themselves untouchable. At the colony, Commander Leona Hayes felt hope surge through her chest. Civilians whispered, some holding their children tightly, others staring at the monitors in stunned awe. Officers exchanged looks of disbelief, gradually replaced by admiration. Humanity had arrived not only to defend but to demonstrate mastery over the void itself. The human warship was more than a vessel of steel and engines, it was a living demonstration of discipline, foresight, patience, and moral clarity. Its presence alone inspired hope, fear, and awe. Captain Vale continued to issue calm, precise orders. Advance steadily. Observe everything. Predict every reaction. Strike only when necessary. Let hesitation dominate them. Let every misstep weaken them further. Pilots adjusted formations, engines hummed with exact efficiency, and cloaked corvettes slipped into flanking positions. Decoy drones manipulated enemy movements, forcing ships into blind spots where engines failed and weapons jammed. Engineers maintained flawless system balance, and communication officers relayed predicted enemy panic to the bridge before it even appeared. The human warship became more than a machine, it became a force of inevitability, a lesson in patience, discipline, and moral precision. Alien panic intensified. Pilots spiraled helplessly. Weapons misfired repeatedly. Engines sputtered. Shields collapsed. Officers cursed, realizing that every assumption about human weakness had been catastrophically wrong. Pride crumbled into fear. Arrogance dissolved into despair. Every subtle interference by humans reinforced dominance without the need for full-strength strikes. The aliens were learning, slowly and painfully, that patience, foresight, and moral clarity were more powerful than numbers or raw firepower. Their trespass into human space had been a fatal miscalculation, and every passing moment confirmed it. Inside the human warship, every officer, pilot, and engineer acted in perfect unison. Fighters deployed in precise sequences, cloaked corvettes manipulated enemy positions, and decoy drones guided alien ships into traps. Engineers rerouted power silently, ensuring flawless shields and operational efficiency. Communication officers predicted panic and relayed instructions to the bridge with perfect timing. Every human action demonstrated control, dominance, and moral clarity. Humanity did not need chaos, indiscriminate fire, or brute force. Patience and precision were the deadliest weapons in the galaxy. At the colony, civilians whispered prayers in awe and relief. Officers exhaled, watching the humans demonstrate mastery over the void. Children pressed their faces against monitors, imagining the discipline, intelligence, and precision required to dominate without a single destructive salvo. Hayes felt tears sting her eyes. Humanity was not just defending, they were teaching the aliens a lesson that would be remembered across the stars. Humans were precise. Humans were disciplined. Humans were unstoppable. Captain Vale observed the alien fleet carefully. Observe. Predict. Let hesitation dominate. Let every misstep break them further. Discipline and patience are stronger than any weapon. Officers nodded. Pilots adjusted formation. Cloaked corvettes slipped silently. Decoy drones disrupted enemy positioning. Engineers maintained perfect systems. Every subtle move reinforced dominance. Alien pride, confidence, and arrogance dissolved into fear, despair, and humiliation. Every invisible interference from humans dominated the battlefield before a single full-strength shot could be fired. The human warship approached the colony steadily, its engines humming silently, its hull glowing cold and precise. Alien ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, engines sputtering. Officers shouted futile orders. Pilots panicked. Engineers cursed. Every assumption about human weakness had been destroyed. Humanity had arrived, and the first stage of total control, discipline, and inevitability had been established. At the colony, awe and hope filled every heart. Civilians whispered softly. Officers held their breath. Children stared wide-eyed at the unfolding events. Hayes felt her chest swell with pride and emotion. Humanity was precise, disciplined, unstoppable. The alien fleet, once arrogant and confident, now trembled under the weight of moral and strategic discipline. They had trespassed expecting weakness but instead encountered patience, foresight, and unyielding resolve. Captain Vale gave the next quiet command. Observe. Predict. Intervene only when necessary. Let hesitation and fear dominate them. Let every misstep show them the cost of arrogance. Officers and crew moved as one, pilots adjusted formation, cloaked corvettes maneuvered, decoy drones disrupted, and engineers maintained perfect operational balance. Every subtle interference from the humans reinforced dominance, leaving the alien fleet in total confusion. Pride, arrogance, and confidence had turned into fear, despair, and humiliation. Every invisible move demonstrated humanity's moral, strategic, and emotional superiority. And as the human warship pressed forward, every alien officer, pilot, and admiral realized too late that their trespass had been a fatal mistake. They had underestimated patience, discipline, and moral clarity. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had demonstrated what it meant to be precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. The human warship moved through the void with quiet inevitability, its massive hull glowing faintly, reflecting the cold light of distant stars. Every system on board operated in perfect harmony, engines humming in precise rhythm, weapons primed but restrained, sensors scanning with patient calculation. The alien fleet, once arrogant and confident, now drifted helplessly, their formations broken, shields flickering, weapons failing, and engines sputtering without reason. Officers screamed futile commands, their faces pale, hands shaking over controls that no longer obeyed. Pilots spun helplessly, struggling to respond to threats that seemed invisible, threats that struck without warning. Engineers cursed as systems betrayed them, realizing their expertise could not counter the subtle, relentless precision of the humans. Arrogance had blinded them, and now humanity's discipline, foresight, and moral clarity dominated every action. Every failure in the alien fleet was a lesson in the cost of misjudging humanity. Captain Orin Vale stood on the bridge, eyes scanning every monitor, every subtle movement of the alien vessels. Observe. Predict. Intervene only where necessary. Let hesitation guide them. Every error is proof of our superiority, he said quietly. Officers moved in perfect synchronization, pilots adjusted trajectories with exacting precision, engineers rerouted power seamlessly to maintain flawless systems. Cloaked corvettes slipped into flanks, invisible yet devastating in effect. Decoy drones manipulated enemy formations, forcing ships into traps where engines failed and weapons misfired. Every subtle human action reinforced dominance without a single full-strength attack. The warship was more than metal and energy, it was an embodiment of patience, precision, and moral clarity. Inside the alien fleet, panic spread uncontrollably. Weapons jammed mid-fire, engines sputtered, shields collapsed unpredictably. Officers cursed, shouting commands that could not be followed. Pilots panicked, spinning helplessly through the void, hearts pounding, minds desperate to find a solution. Engineers worked frantically, but every console failed at the critical moment. Pride dissolved into fear. Confidence shattered into despair. Humanity's dominance had been established without maximum force, demonstrating that discipline, foresight, and moral clarity could dominate more completely than numbers or firepower. Every subtle interference left the alien fleet in chaos, unable to recover. Back at the colony, Commander Leona Hayes watched the unfolding events with awe, hope, and relief flooding her chest. Civilians whispered softly, clutching children, staring at monitors in astonishment. Officers exchanged glances of disbelief, slowly replaced by admiration and renewed determination. Humanity had arrived, not only to defend, but to teach a lesson in mastery, patience, and discipline. The human warship was not merely a machine, it was a symbol of inevitability, precision, and moral certainty. Its very presence inspired hope, fear, and awe, changing the emotional landscape of the entire battlefield. Captain Vale continued to give calm, deliberate orders. Advance slowly. Observe everything. Predict every reaction. Strike only when necessary. Let hesitation dominate them. Let every misstep break them further. Pilots adjusted angles, engines hummed with perfect efficiency, cloaked corvettes moved silently along enemy flanks. Decoy drones manipulated positions, guiding enemy ships into blind spots where engines failed and weapons jammed. Engineers maintained perfect system balance, silently adjusting power, shields, and energy distribution. Communication officers predicted panic before it appeared, relaying critical updates to the bridge. The human warship became more than a ship, it became a force of inevitability, a lesson in precision, discipline, and moral clarity that the aliens could not counter. The alien fleet's panic deepened. Pilots spun helplessly, weapons misfired repeatedly, engines sputtered, and shields collapsed. Officers cursed, realizing that every assumption about human weakness had been catastrophically wrong. Arrogance had turned to despair. Pride dissolved into fear. Every subtle interference from humanity reinforced dominance without the need for full-strength attack. The aliens were learning, slowly, painfully, that patience, foresight, and moral clarity were deadlier than firepower. Their trespass into human space had been a fatal miscalculation, and every passing moment confirmed it. Inside the human warship, every officer, pilot, and engineer operated in perfect harmony. Fighters deployed in precise sequences, cloaked corvettes disrupted enemy formations, and decoy drones manipulated alien ships into traps. Engineers rerouted power silently, ensuring flawless shields and operational efficiency. Communication officers predicted panic and relayed instructions to the bridge before hesitation could appear. Every human action demonstrated control, dominance, and moral clarity. Humanity did not need chaos or brute force. Patience and precision were weapons that no alien technology could counter. At the colony, awe and hope filled every heart. Civilians whispered prayers, children stared wide-eyed, officers exhaled slowly. Hayes felt tears sting her eyes. Humanity was precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. The aliens, once confident and arrogant, now trembled under the weight of moral and strategic discipline. They had trespassed expecting weakness but instead encountered patience, foresight, and unyielding resolve. Every failure in the alien fleet reinforced the lesson: arrogance and misjudgment came at a terrible cost. Captain Vale observed the alien fleet carefully. Observe. Predict. Let hesitation and fear dominate. Let every misstep teach them the cost of arrogance. Discipline and patience are stronger than any weapon, he said. Officers nodded. Pilots adjusted formation, cloaked corvettes moved, decoy drones disrupted enemy positioning, engineers maintained perfect operational systems. Every subtle human action reinforced dominance, leaving the alien fleet in complete confusion. Pride, confidence, and arrogance dissolved into fear, despair, and humiliation. Every invisible maneuver demonstrated humanity's superiority without a single full-strength attack. The human warship approached the colony steadily, its engines humming silently, hull glowing with calculated intent. Alien ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, engines sputtering. Officers shouted futile commands. Pilots panicked. Engineers cursed. Every assumption about human weakness had been destroyed. Humanity had arrived, establishing control, discipline, and inevitability. At the colony, civilians whispered prayers, officers held their breath, children stared wide-eyed. Hayes felt a surge of pride and awe. Humanity was precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. The alien fleet, once confident and arrogant, trembled under moral and strategic superiority. They had trespassed expecting weakness, only to encounter patience, foresight, and absolute determination. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had demonstrated the power of discipline, precision, and inevitability. The first major lesson had been delivered, leaving the alien fleet shattered, confused, and powerless. And as the warship prepared for the next phase, every alien officer, pilot, and admiral understood too late that their trespass had been a fatal error. Humanity's dominance was not brute force, it was inevitability. It was patience. It was discipline. It was moral clarity. And it was unstoppable. The human warship glided silently through the void, an unstoppable force cloaked in the calm certainty of its mission. Its engines hummed with perfect rhythm, sensors scanned every inch of the alien fleet, and weapon systems were primed, though not yet unleashed at full power. The alien vessels, once confident and disciplined, now drifted helplessly, engines sputtering, shields failing, and weapons misfiring in unpredictable patterns. Officers shouted commands that could not be executed, their voices hoarse and panicked. Pilots twisted helplessly in their cockpits, desperately trying to regain control, hands trembling, hearts pounding. Engineers cursed systems that defied every expectation. Admirals stared at screens in disbelief, their arrogance evaporating into fear and despair. Every moment confirmed the absolute truth: humanity's patience, foresight, and discipline were superior to any firepower or technology the galaxy had known. Captain Orin Vale stood calmly on the bridge, eyes scanning monitors with relentless focus. Observe. Predict. Intervene only when necessary. Every hesitation is our advantage. Every error is a lesson. Let patience guide us. Let discipline shield us, he instructed quietly. Officers moved with flawless synchronization. Pilots adjusted their trajectories with exact precision. Engineers rerouted power silently to maintain optimal shields and engine performance. Cloaked corvettes moved into flanking positions, invisible yet devastating. Decoy drones manipulated alien formations, forcing ships into blind spots where engines would fail and weapons would misfire. Every subtle action reinforced human dominance without the need for full-strength strikes. The warship had become a living symbol of inevitability, a manifestation of discipline, foresight, and moral clarity. Inside the alien fleet, panic had become absolute. Weapons jammed mid-fire, shields collapsed unexpectedly, and engines faltered without warning. Officers cursed, shouting orders that could not be followed. Pilots spun helplessly, unable to respond to the invisible, precise, and calculated maneuvers orchestrated by humans. Engineers worked frantically, but every system failed at the critical moment. Pride had transformed into fear, arrogance into despair. Humanity's dominance had been established without maximum force, proving that patience, discipline, and moral clarity were more devastating than any weapon. Every subtle interference caused chaos, fear, and panic among those who had once believed themselves untouchable. At the human colony, Commander Leona Hayes watched the unfolding events with awe and relief. Civilians whispered in quiet astonishment, clutching each other, while children pressed their faces against monitors, eyes wide with wonder. Officers exchanged glances of disbelief that slowly turned into admiration and hope. Humanity had arrived not only to defend but to teach a lesson in mastery, patience, and discipline. The human warship was more than a machine. It was a symbol of inevitability, precision, and moral certainty. Its presence inspired hope, fear, and/or simultaneously, reshaping the emotional landscape of every observer. Captain Vale continued his calm, deliberate orders. Advance steadily. Observe every reaction. Predict every error. Strike only when necessary. Let hesitation dominate them. Let every misstep break them further. Pilots adjusted angles, engines hummed with perfect efficiency, and cloaked corvettes moved silently into flanking positions. Decoy drones manipulated alien movements, forcing ships into blind spots where engines failed and weapons jammed. Engineers maintained flawless system balance, ensuring shields and engines remained optimal. Communication officers predicted enemy panic before it occurred, feeding information to the bridge with perfect timing. The human warship had become more than a vessel. It had become a force of inevitability, a lesson in precision, patience, and moral clarity that aliens could not counter. Panic within the alien fleet reached a fever pitch. Pilots spun helplessly, weapons misfired repeatedly, engines sputtered, and shields flickered. Officers cursed, realizing their assumptions about human weakness had been catastrophically wrong. Arrogance had transformed into despair. Pride crumbled into fear. Every subtle interference from the humans reinforced dominance without firing full-strength attacks. The aliens were learning slowly, painfully, that foresight, patience, and moral clarity were deadlier than any weapon. Their trespass into human space had been a fatal mistake, and every second confirmed it. Within the human warship, every officer, pilot, and engineer acted in flawless harmony. Fighters deployed in precise sequences, cloaked corvettes manipulated enemy formations, and decoy drones guided alien ships into fatal traps. Engineers silently adjusted power distribution, ensuring perfect shields and operational balance. Communication officers predicted panic and relayed instructions before hesitation could appear. Every human action demonstrated control, dominance, and moral precision. Humanity did not require chaos or brute force. Patience and precision were the deadliest weapons, and no alien technology could overcome them. At the colony, civilians whispered prayers of awe and relief. Officers exhaled, watching humanity demonstrate mastery over the void. Children stared in wonder, imagining the precision, discipline, and intelligence necessary to dominate without firing maximum weapons. Hayes felt tears prick her eyes. Humanity had not merely defended, they had taught the aliens a lesson in the cost of arrogance, the weight of discipline, and the inevitability of moral precision. Every alien failure reinforced the lesson: underestimate humans and pay a terrible price. Captain Vale observed the alien fleet carefully. Observe. Predict. Let hesitation dominate. Let every misstep teach them the cost of arrogance. Discipline and patience are stronger than any weapon, he said. Officers nodded. Pilots adjusted formation, cloaked corvettes maneuvered silently, decoy drones disrupted enemy positioning, and engineers maintained perfect operational systems. Every subtle human action reinforced dominance, leaving the alien fleet in total confusion. Pride, confidence, and arrogance had dissolved into fear, despair, and humiliation. Every invisible maneuver demonstrated humanity's superiority without firing a single full-strength shot. The human warship approached the colony steadily, engines humming, hull glowing cold and precise. Alien ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, engines sputtering. Officers shouted futile commands. Pilots panicked. Engineers cursed. Every assumption about human weakness had been destroyed. Humanity had arrived, establishing control, discipline, and inevitability. At the colony, civilians whispered prayers, officers held their breath, children stared wide-eyed. Hayes felt a surge of pride and awe. Humanity was precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. The alien fleet, once confident and arrogant, now trembled under moral and strategic superiority. They had trespassed expecting weakness but instead encountered patience, foresight, and unyielding resolve. Humanity had arrived, demonstrating the power of discipline, precision, and inevitability. As the human warship prepared for the final phase, every alien officer, pilot, and admiral understood too late that their trespass had been a fatal error. Humanity's dominance was not brute force, it was inevitability. It was patience. It was discipline. It was moral clarity. And it was unstoppable. The galaxy would remember this day, the day humans showed what it truly meant to be precise, disciplined, and unstoppable, even against overwhelming odds. The void fell silent for a moment, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The human warship hovered steadily, colossal and precise, its engines glowing coldly, a silent testament to humanity's discipline and foresight. The alien fleet, once arrogant, confident, and proud, now drifted in chaotic disarray. Ships with shattered formations spun helplessly, engines sputtering, weapons misfiring, shields flickering. Officers screamed commands that could not be executed. Pilots struggled futilely, twisting helplessly in their cockpits, hearts pounding with fear, minds desperate to understand a force they had so drastically underestimated. Engineers cursed every console that betrayed them. Admirals, faces pale and eyes wide with panic, realized the full scale of their failure. They had trespassed into human space expecting weakness, seeking easy victory, and now, they faced the full weight of inevitability. Every moment confirmed that humanity's patience, foresight, and moral clarity were absolute. The aliens' arrogance had become their undoing, and the humans' precision, discipline, and determination now dominated every inch of space. Captain Orin Vale stood calmly on the bridge, eyes scanning the monitors, tracking every motion, every subtle hesitation, every panicked reaction. Observe. Predict. Intervene only where necessary. Let hesitation rule them. Let every failure teach the cost of arrogance, he said quietly. Officers moved with flawless synchronization, pilots adjusted trajectories with exacting precision, engineers rerouted power seamlessly to maintain optimal shields and engine performance. Cloaked corvettes slipped into flanking positions, invisible yet devastating. Decoy drones manipulated alien ships into blind spots where engines failed and weapons misfired. Every subtle action reinforced human dominance without needing full-strength fire. The warship was not merely a vessel, it was a living lesson in patience, discipline, and moral clarity. Inside the alien fleet, panic became absolute. Weapons jammed mid-fire, shields collapsed unpredictably, and engines faltered without warning. Officers cursed, shouting orders that could not be followed. Pilots spun helplessly, unable to counter the invisible and calculated manipulations of the humans. Engineers worked frantically, but every system failed at the moment it was most needed. Pride had transformed into fear, arrogance into despair. Humanity's dominance was now complete, a devastating demonstration that patience, foresight, and moral clarity could conquer where sheer force failed. Every subtle interference caused chaos, hopelessness, and panic among those who had believed themselves untouchable. At the colony, Commander Leona Hayes watched the events unfold with a mixture of awe, hope, and relief. Civilians whispered in quiet astonishment, clutching children, while officers exchanged glances that shifted from disbelief to admiration. Humanity had arrived not only to defend but to teach the galaxy a lesson in mastery, discipline, and moral clarity. The human warship was more than steel and engines, it was a symbol of inevitability, precision, and emotional strength. Its presence inspired hope and fear, awe and respect, changing the emotional landscape for everyone watching. Captain Vale continued issuing calm, deliberate orders. Advance steadily. Observe every reaction. Predict every error. Strike only when necessary. Let hesitation dominate them. Let every misstep teach the cost of arrogance. Pilots adjusted formations, engines hummed with perfect efficiency, cloaked corvettes moved silently, and decoy drones manipulated enemy positions. Engineers maintained flawless system balance, ensuring shields and engines remained optimal. Communication officers relayed predicted enemy panic to the bridge with perfect timing. The human warship had become more than a ship, it had become a force of inevitability, a lesson in precision, patience, and moral clarity that the aliens could not counter. Panic in the alien fleet reached its peak. Pilots twisted helplessly, weapons misfired repeatedly, engines sputtered, and shields failed. Officers cursed, realizing that every assumption about human weakness had been catastrophically wrong. Arrogance dissolved into despair. Pride turned to fear. Every subtle action from the humans reinforced dominance without a single full-strength attack. The aliens were learning painfully that patience, foresight, and moral clarity were deadlier than numbers or firepower. Their trespass had been a fatal mistake, and every moment confirmed it. Within the human warship, every officer, pilot, and engineer moved in perfect harmony. Fighters deployed in precise sequences, cloaked corvettes manipulated enemy formations, and decoy drones guided alien ships into fatal traps. Engineers silently adjusted power distribution, ensuring perfect shields and operational balance. Communication officers predicted panic and relayed instructions before hesitation could appear. Every human action demonstrated control, dominance, and moral clarity. Humanity did not need chaos or brute force. Patience and precision were the deadliest weapons. No alien technology could overcome them. At the colony, civilians whispered prayers of awe and relief. Officers exhaled slowly, watching humanity demonstrate mastery over the void. Children stared wide-eyed, imagining the intelligence, discipline, and precision required to dominate without firing maximum weapons. Hayes felt tears well in her eyes. Humanity had not merely defended, they had shown what it meant to be precise, disciplined, and unstoppable. Every alien failure reinforced the lesson. Arrogance and misjudgment came at a terrible cost. Captain Vale observed the alien fleet carefully. Observe. Predict. Let hesitation dominate. Let every misstep teach them the cost of arrogance. Discipline and patience are stronger than any weapon. Officers nodded. Pilots adjusted formation, cloaked corvettes maneuvered silently, decoy drones disrupted enemy positioning, engineers maintained perfect operational systems. Every subtle action reinforced dominance, leaving the alien fleet in total confusion. Pride, confidence, and arrogance dissolved into fear, despair, and humiliation. Every invisible maneuver demonstrated humanity's superiority without firing a single full-strength shot. The human warship hovered above the colony, silent and coldly precise. Alien ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, engines sputtering. Officers shouted futile commands. Pilots panicked. Engineers cursed. Every assumption about human weakness had been destroyed. Humanity had arrived, establishing control, discipline, and inevitability. At the colony, civilians whispered prayers, officers held their breath, children stared wide-eyed. Hayes felt pride and awe swell in her chest. Humanity was precise, disciplined, unstoppable. The alien fleet, once arrogant and confident, trembled under moral and strategic superiority. They had trespassed expecting weakness but instead encountered patience, foresight, and unyielding resolve. Humanity had arrived, demonstrating the power of discipline, precision, and inevitability. Every alien failure was a testament to the consequences of arrogance. And then, the human warship began its final maneuvers. Engines flared softly, precise, controlled, yet undeniably powerful. Cloaked corvettes slipped behind enemy vessels. Decoy drones manipulated final movements. Every subtle interference guided the alien ships toward ultimate failure. Captain Vale issued calm, final orders, let them unravel. Observe. Predict. Ensure they understand the cost of their arrogance. Humanity is precise. Humanity is disciplined. Humanity is unstoppable. The alien fleet, already broken and demoralized, reached the peak of despair. Systems collapsed, weapons failed, and pilots surrendered to panic. Officers wept quietly in disbelief, realizing their trespass had been catastrophic. Pride and arrogance had been replaced by fear and regret. Humanity had delivered its lesson without even a single full-strength salvo. Precision, patience, and moral clarity had triumphed. In the colony, civilians wept in relief, officers held their heads high, and children stared in awe. Hayes exhaled slowly, tears streaming freely. Humanity had not only defended but had reminded the galaxy what it truly meant to be unstoppable. The warship glowed coldly, engines humming with calm authority. The humans had proven that discipline, foresight, and moral certainty could dominate beyond comprehension. The aliens had trespassed, underestimated, and failed. Humanity had arrived, and nothing in the galaxy would forget the lesson. Captain Vale looked out into the void, silent, confident, unstoppable. The aliens would retreat, humiliated and broken. Humanity had struck not with chaos, not with brute force, but with inevitability, precision, patience, and moral clarity. The galaxy would remember this day. The humans had emerged victorious not because they fired first or strongest, but because they were disciplined, patient, and precise. They were humanity, unstoppable and unyielding. The void itself seemed to acknowledge it. Silence returned, not of defeat, but of inevitability. Humanity had won.